This will be good.
Mr Speaker, I rise in support of the Customs Excise Joint Border Management Sharing and Other Matters Amendment Bill, and this its first reading. I support this bill, Mr Speaker, because the measures outlined are designed to protect our borders against the threats and risks without compromising trade and travel standards. Now, I'd like to specifically talk about two separate areas in more detail. The first thing I would like to talk about is why this bill is important. Secondly, I'd like to outline a couple of measures proposed in the bill. Mr Speaker, we are a country surrounded by a large natural moat called the Pacific Ocean. 15,000 kilometres of it, in fact. So everything that comes into New Zealand does so by sea or air. The challenges this brings, however, are substantial, both human and pest, and sometimes human pests. The crooks are getting smarter, the rewards for illegal activity larger, and more tempting to certain undesirable sectors of the travelling populace. We need to keep up and fight this scourge head-on with all the resources we can muster, and we also need to act smarter. Mr Speaker, this bill is important in this day and age as it recognises there is a need for more effective and enhanced collaboration between agencies at the border, as well as greater value for money by eliminating duplicated services. What I mean by this is the Ministry of Forestry and Agriculture, the police, the IRD, customs services, etc. need to be linked in a way that avoids duplication whilst promoting efficiency and cooperation. It's a nonsense that government agencies can't connect electronically in any way that provides a higher level of security and minimises the risk to the wonderful people of New Zealand at this point in time. So there has been made funding available for the first stage of the Joint Border Management System, which at this stage will be an integrated computerised system to provide border management services for Customs and the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry. Now, the reason why we are debating this bill is because legislation is actually required to implement the proposals that will, 1, develop a legislative framework to oversee the future sharing of information between border activities and agencies. And let's face facts, there are some privacy concerns around this bill when government agencies have the ability to share information relating to all New Zealanders. We need to eliminate the perception that this is Big Brother in action. And my colleague William Seo spoke at length about this about 10 minutes ago. Secondly, enable Customs' overall stewardship and management of the integrated border management system generally, and hence mandate the operation of this system. Thirdly, to provide an interim legislative framework to support the immediate sharing of information for 2 short-term projects. Mr Speaker, the amendments proposed in the bill have a range of objectives, and these include enhancing coordination between Customs and other government departments and reducing duplication of processes and enhancing risk management. Mr Speaker, I'd like to first outline the current situation and the basic but not the only problem this bill seeks to address. Information sharing between border agencies is currently governed by a complex web of law. Sharing of information is permitted by specific laws. These laws typically only apply to a narrow range of information or a narrow range of situations. Other exchanges are permitted on a case-by-case basis within a framework created by the interface between the Official Information Act and the Privacy Act. This is complex and onerous. Customs efforts in recent years to focus on greater collaboration with other agencies at the border have relied on these set of laws and protocols. The existing provisions have allowed Customs to develop good partnerships, great partnerships with other agencies, but they've also highlighted the need for a simpler, clearer and more transparent regime of more general application, and I doubt anyone would disagree with this. Not even that person on the phone. Now, what we are proposing here is to amend the Customs and Excise Act to provide for the making of regulations in future to specify agencies which can access information held by Customs, including specific conditions on the use of the information by accessing agencies. For example, no one will be able to access information to check on a prospective neighbour or a daughter's boyfriend. I make light of this, but privacy is a very important issue, and I'll be very interested in reading the submissions on this aspect of the bill if the House sends us to Select Committee. Now, the reality of this is that the option of requiring law changes to be made to each specific information sharing need identified is simply too onerous. This is due to the expected substantial delays caused by the lengthy legislative process and resource demand. This framework is the preferred option because, one, it will have sufficient flexibility to be able to deliver additional processes effectively in the future. It properly considers privacy interests that arise through requiring regulatory changes to be discussed with the Privacy Commissioner. It ensures ongoing parliamentary oversight through the Regulations Review Committee. This is enabling provision that will have no initial impact on business. However, when regulations are made under this provision, the impact on business will be considered as part of the regulatory change process. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to briefly elaborate a little further on the Joint Border Management System. This management system is designed to achieve substantial benefits from automating information storage and sharing across the border sector. As mentioned, the current law for information sharing on a case-by-case basis is not sufficient in the 21st century to cover the quantity of information sharing between Customs and the Ministry of Forestry and Agriculture. The preferred option to address this issue is to amend the Act to, 1, enable Customs overall stewardship and operation of the system, 2, mandate the accessing of use by Customs of information stored in the management system, which will be allowed in the Act, and 3, to mandate the accessing and use by MAF of information stored in the Joint Border Management System, which is allowed for in the Biosecurity Act. This amendment is required to allow the access to the common set of data required by both Customs and MAF. The proposed approach is a logical option to enable Customs and MAF to share this information without duplicating the collection process. This proposal is to enable MAF to access potentially broader classes of information held by Customs that MAF requires to undertake its border management role as it transitions from 100% screening to risk management. The proposed management system and trade single window will allow traders and other commercial entities to enter information once, which will then be accessible by both MAF and Customs. This is common sense in this day and age, and absolutely necessary if we are to protect our borders going forward. It will also reduce compliance costs to industry. It also enhances the effectiveness of border agencies by reducing the costs of capturing and accessing the information. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I've talked about why this bill is important. We need to work together and smarter and use the technology that exists to create a broader protection system that will provide us with a very powerful tool to battle in the battle to keep New Zealand and New Zealanders safe. I also spoke about the development of the Joint Border Management System that actually requires legislation to implement. However, we are supporting this because we believe that it is vital in the development of information sharing, thus efficiency between the various government agencies. Only MAF and Customs to start with. However, hopefully this is just the beginning of the networking of the system of government needed to protect our borders. Mr. Speaker.